Welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective with Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. Planning for your financial future means navigating challenges like market volatility, inflation, and retirement income. Pankinen Financial Perspective is here to help by addressing common financial concerns, sharing valuable strategies, and exploring ways you can work toward your financial goals. Now let's get started with Pankinen Financial Perspective.
Hello and welcome to the Pankinen Financial Perspective. My name is Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 952-873-2703 or visit us online at pankinenfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. And while at my website, click on the radio page to check out past shows and to subscribe to our program on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Also on my website, click the link at the top to get the latest retirement guide. Today, we're talking about something that's going to matter a lot for people planning for retirement: the coming 2026 changes to IRAs and 401ks. Now, these updates just aren't technical tweaks buried in fine print. They can create opportunities to save more, build more, and strengthen your long-term financial plan. But here's the key. These new opportunities only help if you actually understand the rules. And with 2026 bringing higher contribution limits, new withdrawal requirements, and a handful of adjustments tied to that Secure 2.0 Act, and inflation, there's a lot to keep track of. One of the biggest shifts is a major change to catch-up contributions for high earners, which is something many people haven't heard about yet. So during today's show, we'll be referencing a Kiplinger article, 6 changes to IRAs, 401ks, and HSAs in 2026. And to help me dig into all this, let me bring in my co-host, Tony Shore, the person who somehow manages to stay upbeat even when Congress gives us more pages of legislation to interpret than anyone asked for.
Well, I do try to stay upbeat. You know that, Ashton.
For sure.
I try to stay upbeat. It gets hard some days. Some days are easier than others. I mean,
you're a pretty positive guy, Tony.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on right now. And, I'm not saying stick your head in the sand and don't ever watch the news. But right now, you might want to just small doses because the sky is always falling. I think that there are a lot of new rules and regulations. That's why you're here. That's why we have you, Ashton, to keep track. Yep. I was told there would be no math. That's why
I'll take care of that for you.
Yeah. You take care of that for us. And that's why we're on the show, for you to help people, interpret all of these changes that are happening. And there's a lot. A lot of the Secure Act 2.0 and the Big Beautiful Bill, it takes effect this year for
Correct.
This year's taxes that are going on right now throughout the year. So this is a good time to review it. We're, finishing up the first quarter here of 2026, and we've got a lot of year in front of us yet.
For
so
sure.
Good to know about these things. Now, before we get started, Ashton, I wanted to ask you how you've been. What have you been doing? Anything fun?
Yeah, I've been good. We've been cheering on the Belle Plaine Tigers here in their run for the sections here. They won the semifinal match Monday night, and as of this recording, they haven't played the section championship here to make it to state, and so we're going to go root them on tonight. And
nice.
Yeah, so it's been exciting. It's
that's huge.
Yeah, I go with my 7-year-old son. He gets into it. He starts doing the cheers with the student section and all that.
Sure.
The spirit fingers when the guys are shooting free throws. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's fun. Have you you going to any of the hockey tournament games?
I didn't make it to but I watched it on Channel 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was some good hockey to watch.
That was some great hockey. It's a little scuffles. Did you see that after the
I saw
game?
that.
Yeah. A little bench clearing brawl there after one of the games. So
yeah. I love this time of year. It's fun watching the high school teams up there state, and even if you don't have a team that's playing up there, it's a neat energy. It's a different energy than watching professional sports or whatever. So.
It is. It's very different, but it's different in a good way. I think so. Well, hey, talking today about that catch-up contribution, higher limits. clearer guidelines. I think this is going to make a meaningful difference for anybody trying to build a more solid retirement plan.
Yeah.
I mean, just the catch-up contribution change for high earners, that's a big one. Some high earners have to look at that. I think a lot of listeners are going to want to understand how this works, if it affects them and where the cutoff is, who can take advantage of it. So let's start with that.
Yeah. Let's start with one of those biggest changes in 2026, and that's aimed directly at those high earners who are 50 or older. So beginning in 2026, if you're in that group and you want to make catch-up contributions to your 401k, 403b, or government 457 plan, those contributions can no longer be pre-tax. They must go into the Roth side of the plan, which means they're made on an after-tax basis. So now that's a pretty important shift. In the past, many high earners savers relied on that for the tax deduction up front when making those catch-up contributions. That's the reason they did those additional contributions, was to get that tax deduction. But starting in 2026, that deduction disappears for anyone who meets an income threshold. And so instead, that trade-off becomes you pay taxes on that money now, but qualified withdrawals in retirement are going to be tax-free. And so again, the benefit moves from the front end to the back end. So most importantly, you have to meet both criteria. You have to be 50 or older, or you'll turn the 50 in that year. And then your FICA wages from the prior calendar year, usually that box 3 on your W-2, were over $150,000 with employer sponsoring the plan. And so again, it's not household income if you have multiple jobs. It's just at that employer. So again, if your 2025 FICA taxes or FICA wages exceed that 150,000 and you're at least 50, you won't be able to deduct that catch-up contribution anymore. So that income threshold will adjust for inflation over time, but the rule itself is here to stay. Another important detail here in 2026, that catch-up limit is 8,000, which is up from 7,500 in 2025. And if you're subject to that high earner rule, that entire 8,000 must be designated as Roth or after tax. There isn't a pre-tax option.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because a lot of people who are making, if you're an individual and you're making over 150,000, you're probably going to want as much tax break.
Sure. Yeah, you want to get that deduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that part can catch people by surprise. And if your employer plan doesn't offer that Roth feature, then high earners who fall under this rule simply won't be allowed to make that catch-up contribution at all. And so again, it's something worth checking with sooner than later, before you hit that limit on your contributions for the year. And then now all of a sudden you can't put any additional in.
And that's a major change, especially for people who are counting on those pre-tax contributions in their final working years. It doesn't currently apply to me, Ashton, but I'm going to hit you up for a raise after the show. So
there we go.
So it will be my problem.
Maybe in 2027, that'll be an issue for you.
All right.
No, and again, I mean, you're right there. Typically, the later earning years, you're going to be higher earning years. And so it is something that people have to be aware of. That's why it's a good time to start having conversations with your plan administrator or your financial or tax professional. If you're near that income level or already above it, you want to understand how this mandatory Roth catch-up rule could impact that 2026 savings strategy and or your tax planning for that. The earlier you plan, the smoother that transition will be. Let's move on to another big change coming in 2026, which is increased contribution limits for that 401k, 403b, and 457 plan. We see these limits rise from time to time, but 2026, the adjustments are especially meaningful. And anytime those ceilings go up, it gives employees more room to build that long-term savings plan.
Sure. And that's huge. And that's something that I know a lot of people might not understand. It's huge for anyone who's really trying to maximize those final working years, though, especially people planning to use that catch-up contribution. A lot of people are like, wow, I'm not contributing that much. Well, if you're in your later working years, you should be, and
it's a good opportunity. Again, we talk about this, you're in your higher earning years towards the end there. And then maybe the kids are out of the house. And so you got a little less expenses going on that way. And so again, when those limits rise, it lets people put more income into tax advantaged accounts, which can boost those long-term compound growth. And, depending on how they structure the contributions, they may also may be able to get those immediate tax benefits. Part of the reason why these higher limits are so important, some experts suggest that some people may need more personal savings to help offset any potential reductions later on. One estimate from the article suggests that someone might need about $138,000 in additional savings just to create the same income if they end up reducing Social Security at all. And that's using that 4% withdrawal rule.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned Social Security and the trust fund.
Here's another truth. Social Security is dying.
I mean, I hope not. Let's hope not. I don't think it's dying.
I don't think it will die. Yeah.
I don't think it's dying. And
God bless Social Security.
God bless Social Security, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, timing is a big thing, and that this puts the whole contribution increase, though, into perspective. If you're saying you're going to need additional savings just to create the same income, and you mentioned, there's the 4% rule, which is a guideline but doesn't apply to everyone.
Yeah,
you really need you're going to have your own specific number, right?
Yeah, and again, since we're talking numbers, Tony, here's what 2026 looks like. Employee contributions under that age 50 is at $24,500 that you can put into a plan now. That's up about $1,000 from $23,500 in 2025. Catch-up contributions have also increased for those age 50 plus to $8,000 from $7,500. And then total, so that means total for that age 50 plus is going to be $32,500. And then we do have that super catch up for ages 60 to 63, and that's still at $11,250. So again, that total for the ages 60 to 63 that you could put away is $35,750 in those super catch up years, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. And yeah, that super catch up is interesting. So you have to really look at the numbers out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that super catch up, it's a window, after that you go back to the regular catch up age there. And so again, for anyone who hasn't reviewed their contribution strategy lately, this is a great time to do it. These changes can give people real opportunities to strengthen their retirement plan heading into 2026. Now let's shift over to IRAs, because traditional and Roth IRAs are also seeing some important updates for 2026. Now, one thing that trips people up is the income rules around traditional IRAs, not for contributing, but for deducting those contributions. There's no income limit to putting money into a traditional IRA, but the ability to actually deduct that contribution depends on your income and whether you or your spouse is covered by a workplace retirement plan.
Yeah. Well, and right. And that's where people sometimes get confused, because it's not just about your coverage. Your spouse's coverage can and should affect you, can affect your deduction as well. And you really need to consider that, right? Yeah.
And if you're personally not covered by that retirement plan at work, but your spouse is, you can still take the deduction, but your joint income determines whether you can get that full deduction, a partial one, or none at all. So, here's the simplest version. If neither of you is covered by a workplace plan, you can take the full deduction up to the annual limit, no matter what your modified adjusted gross income is, or MAGI, whatever that, doesn't matter what that happens to be.
Sure. I think that, that modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, that's something you don't hear a lot about, but you do have to take that into consideration. Right.
Yes.
So let's talk about numbers, because that's what everybody wants to know. Right.
Yeah. And for 2026, the contribution limits look like this. Traditional or Roth IRA contributions for under age 50 is up to $7,500 from $7,000 in 2025. And again, that number seems to go up on a regular basis to kind of adjust for inflation there. Catch-up contributions also were adjusted for those age 50 plus. They went from $1,100 up to $1,000. So again, if you're age 50 plus, you can put $8,600 into those IRAs. So now let's look at the phase out for deducting that contribution to the IRA. again, depends on your filing status and whether you're covered by a workplace plan. And so again, this is a good time of year to talk about this. You're meeting with your accountants. Can we do a tax deductible contribution? Should we be looking at a Roth option? And so again, if you're covered by a plan at work in 2026, the phase outs are the following. Single or head of household, to get that full deduction, you got to have 81,000 or less in income. And then it phases out and you don't have any deduction at 91,000 or more. Married filing jointly and both spouses are covered by a plan at work. The full deduction, you can get that at $129,000 or less for household income. And then again, that phases out and to fully no deduction at $149,000. And then again, if we look at married filing separately, that deduction, you have to be below $10,000 to get a deduction, and otherwise you don't get any deduction.
Yeah. So if only one spouse is covered then by a workplace plan, that opens up a different set of income thresholds. Is that correct?
Yeah, it does. And for many married couples filing jointly, the phase out ranges are higher. That full deduction is at $242,000 or less. Partial deduction, again, phases out at $252,000, so you can get a partial deduction up to there. And then once you reach that $252,000, you're no longer able to get that deduction. And then again, all those numbers are up from the 2025 limits. Again, typically those increase each year as well.
Yeah, they raised the limits on us. Lots of changes, lots of numbers on today's show, but you do need to be aware of these things. And Roth IRAs still have their own separate income rules. And you've mentioned this before, Ashton. Those don't affect deductions. They determine whether you can contribute at all as far as Roths are concerned, right?
Yeah, exactly, Tony. For 2026, the Roth income phase out ranges look like this. If you're single, filing head of household, it begins at $153,000 and then ends at $168,000. And then again, married filing jointly begins at $242,000 and ends at $252,000. So again, if your household income is below that $240,000, you can still do $242,000. You can still do a Roth IRA contribution. And then again, married filing separately, the phase out is below $10,000, same as previous years.
Yeah. And it's never too soon to start looking at a Roth possibly.
Mom, that's for my Roth IRA.
Exactly, Tony.
Right?
It's never too late. It's always good to have that tax-free pool.
Right. And I think the bottom line here is that IRAs are becoming more flexible in terms of contribution amounts, but people need to understand where their personal situation and their income fits into all these deduction and eligibility rules. And really, so you don't have to try to keep track of all this. That's where I think it's important to work with somebody like yourself, Ashton.
Yeah, I agree. And, all these adjustments happening in 2026, it's a great time to reevaluate your IRA strategy, especially if your income is near one of those phase out ranges. Now that we've talked about personal retirement accounts like IRAs, let's shift to something more important, or just as important, I guess, those retirement plans or for small business owners and the self-employed. 2026 changes actually offer some of the biggest opportunities for them. When contribution limits rise for plans like SEP IRAs, solo 401ks, and simple IRAs, that's definitely a powerful development. It means business owners can set aside more money in tax-advantaged accounts, not just for themselves, but also for their employees.
Yeah, this is a big deal if you're self-employed or a business owner, because small business owners don't always get that same built-in benefit that employees at larger companies get. So when these limits increase, I think it really gives them room to build more security, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's well stated, and there's another side to it. Higher contribution ceilings can help a business owner maximize those deductions. Nobody likes to pay those taxes. And so if we can, reduce those taxes, and then it also gives us an opportunity to make benefits packages more competitive for employees, and that matters if you're trying to attract and retain good talent. So let's break down some of these numbers for 2026.
All right. So let's start with the simple IRAs or simple 401ks.
Yeah, for those plans in 2026, limits look like this. Employee contribution limit is $17,000, which is $500 higher than last year. Catch-up contributions are $4,000, which is also up $500 for last year. And then we've got that super catch-up which stays the same this year as last year, and that's $5,250 there. And then if we look at SEP IRAs, maximum annual contribution of $72,000 in 2026, which is up $2,000. And then again, annual compensation limit of that $360,000, which is up $10,000 as well.
Wow.
And importantly, SEP IRAs don't allow super catch-up contributions, unlike some of the other plans.
And you know what? I know that solo 401ks are always a popular route to go for self-employed listeners out there. What's changing with those solo 401ks?
Yeah, we've got a lot of solo 401k plans here, and it's a good opportunity for those individual business owners to get those deductions. And so here's the breakdown by age group. Under age 50, you can put $24,500 in there. Ages 50 to 59, you can get up to $32,500, which includes that $8,000 catch up. And then age 60 to 63, you can put up to $35,750 in there, which includes that super catch up of $11,250. And so again, it's a great opportunity to get that tax deduction. And then they also have employer contributions of up to 25% for all those age groups. And so, for these business owners that are looking for that tax deduction this year, here's the amount that they could contribute to it to get that tax deduction. If you're under age 50, you could do up to $72,000 and get that tax deduction. Ages 50 to 59, and then 64 plus, you could put $80,000 in there. And then ages 60, 63 in that super catch-up age, it's $83,250. And there's one more important detail in that solo 401k. You can contribute both employee and for the employer. And as the employer, your profit sharing contribution can be that 25% of compensation after Social Security and Medicare taxes. And so again, that overall compensation cap is $360,000 for 2026.
That's a lot of opportunities. I know we're throwing out a lot of numbers here, but this, especially for self-employed people who want to make the most of their high earning years and put as much away as they can for retirement and to invest, these plans really do give them a chance to build that strong retirement foundation, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And it's absolutely, with higher limits in 2026. You could be great for those business owners to reevaluate their retirement and saving strategies and just make sure they're using the options that are available to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we keep going, let our listeners out there know how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah. Again, I know there's a lot of numbers here. It might be best just to give us a call and take a look at your individual situation. That number is 952-873-2703. Again, 952-873-2703, or visit us online at pankininfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. Scheduling a consultation only takes a few minutes, and we're always happy to work around your schedule.
All right. Sounds good. What's next?
Well, let's take a quick look at a simpler but more important changes coming in 2026, and that might show up in your mailbox. Defined contribution plans like 401ks must send participants at least one paper statement every year, unless you've chosen to receive that electronically.
Sure. Makes sense. So even people who have been strictly digital up until now might suddenly see an envelope from their retirement plan provider, is what you're saying.
Exactly, Tony. And again, it's a small change, but it's an important one just to look for that communication.
Yeah.
It's also a good cue to look at if, you want to review your communication preferences, but we also want to look at something else, HSAs, health savings accounts.
Yeah.
It's a big topic here. Healthcare can be one of the toughest costs to manage, especially later in life. And HSAs are one of the most tax advantaged ways to prepare for those expenses. So if you've enrolled in a qualified high deductible health plan, you can contribute to an HSA before you sign up for Medicare. So what makes HSAs so powerful, Tony, is the triple tax benefit. Your contributions go in pre-tax, or they're tax deductible if you contribute after tax, and they grow tax-free, and withdrawals are tax-free as long as you use them for those qualified medical expenses.
Yeah. And after the age of 65, the rules shift a little bit, right?
Yeah, they do. After 65, you can still withdraw HSA funds for non-medical reasons without a penalty. But the withdrawals are just taxed as ordinary income, which is similar to how a traditional IRA works. But if you use those funds for qualified medical expenses, they remain completely tax-free. So now to even have an HSA, your health plan has to meet certain criteria. And that's where things like contribution limits, minimum deductibles, and maximum out-of-pocket amounts come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many rules here, Ashton, that, I know catch-up contributions work a little differently with HSAs. We're not going to go over those numbers. If people want to sit down with you and talk more about that, they can. Yep. And people need to decide whether a high deductible plan is a good fit, because that's where you get the HSAs and they can be valuable, but only if the plan itself meets eligibility rules, right?
Yeah, you got it, Tony. And here's a helpful tip. If you can use HSA funds tax-free, or that you can use HSA funds tax-free for Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, as well as some co-pays, deductibles, and co-insurance. So just keep that in mind, that you can't use Medicare premiums. You can't use that for your HSA. Those withdrawals would be taxable.
Yeah. And, after listening to you walk through all these changes, from the catch-up rules to IRA limits to HSA details, it shows how complicated retirement planning can be and why you keep so busy helping people with this, because these aren't small tweaks. They're the kind of shifts that change how people save, how they invest, and how they can prepare for the long term, right?
Yeah, and while most of these updates are positive, including higher limits, more opportunities, more flexibility, they can also create some confusion. So that's where working with a financial advisor or professional can make a huge difference. A lot of people don't realize how much strategy goes into choosing the right account, the right contribution level, or even the right timing.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So this has been another great show today. Ashton, do you have anything else you want to add for our listeners before we go?
Yeah, again, Tony, for me, there is a lot of numbers here, a lot of different strategies that we can implement. And so it's important to sit down with somebody and make sure that customized plan fits your needs. And so again, if you want to sit down and look at your financial strategy, visit our website. You can go to pankininfinancial.com, PANKONIN financial.com, or just give our office a call. It's the best way to get a hold of us. And if we don't answer, we'll get back to you. That number is 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703. We'd love to help you protect your savings and feel confident about the road ahead.
All right, and that does it for today's episode of the Pankinen Financial Perspective with our host, Ashton Pankinen.
Thank you for joining us for Pankinen Financial Perspective. Don't head into retirement without a plan for both your finances and your health. For more information, contact Ashton Pankinen at Pankinen Financial Group at 952-873-2703 or visit pankininfinancialgroup.com. Join us again soon for another episode of Pankinen Financial Perspective. Advisory services are offered by Ashton Pankinen LLC DBA Pankinen Financial Group, an investment advisor in the state of Minnesota.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.